Please be seated. The thing that goes bump in the night. I'm going to tell you about the thing that goes bump in the night. And this is how it happens. One night, it was dark. I got up because I was thirsty. But I don't like to disturb people. So I decided I know my way to the kitchen. I know my way out the bedroom door, down the hall. But my problem was I turned on the kitchen light, which immediately destroyed my night vision. Those of you that have been in the military know how important it is to keep your night vision. So I destroyed my night vision. I had my drink of water, turned out the light, and made my way back to the bedroom. Well, the thing that went bump in the night was me. Because instead of going through the door, I ran straight into the door frame with my nose. Ouch. That's what the dark will do to you. The dark will cause all kinds of problems if you're not careful. The darkness. The people that dwelled in darkness. We know what it's like a little bit to live in darkness. But we live in modern times where light is all around us. Ancient peoples would huddle around fires and huddle together for protection because night was a scary thing. I had the opportunity a number of years ago on safari in Tanzania. And at one point on this safari, they said, we're going to be driving for about 4 hours, and we did. Animals everywhere, zebra, giraffe, elephants, you name it, we saw it. We drove for about 4 hours and then came to this lovely hotel surrounded by a palisade. We had a great meal that evening. It was absolutely delightful. But they told us, make sure you have your flashlight. We'd been told to bring a flashlight with us, because at 9 o'clock at night, the lights go off and they don't come on again. Because this is out in the middle of nowhere. You're miles from a city or town. They don't string power out there. Everything is run on a generator, and so they shut the generator off at 9 o'clock at night, so you're left completely in the dark. Now you could step outside and see the beautiful stars. I don't think there was a moon that night. I don't remember seeing the moon, but you could see stars, and they were so bright. But also in the night were the sounds of all the animals that were roaming around. We could hear the hyena. We could hear lions. And we could hear things that I don't know what that thing was, but it was scary. So I'm glad I was in my room in my hotel with my little flashlight just in case. I mean, I don't know if there's monsters in Africa, but this sounded like a monster. It was horrific sounding out there. And you can see why our ancient ancestors built fires and went into caves and huddled around fires in order to protect themselves, because the dark can be scary. Even in California, you all know you don't let your cats out at night, right? Because the coyotes are out there. There are things that are scary in the dark at night. And it's always been that way. And even to this day, it is true. And yet, it's not just the things that go bump in the night, the scary animals that can get you in some way, shape, or form. It's also the metaphorical darkness that is out there. The darkness that is all around us, even to our modern day. We can think about the darkness of times past, the darkness of the Holocaust, and Jews being marched into gas chambers. Go back farther, our Native American brothers and sisters on the trail of tears and the darkness of the oppression against Native Americans. The darkness of slavery and the darkness that still exists of oppression against people of color. There is still darkness in our world. It is still a part of us. And yet into that darkness steps light. light that opposes the darkness. That darkness is sometimes made metaphorical in the sense that it is condensed down into a person. High fantasy literature loves to talk about this. I just finished up a couple months ago listening on audiobook Robert Jordan's 14-volume Wheel of Time series. It is a marathon, believe me, 14 volumes. But in it, it is the forces of the light against the forces of the dark, particularly the dark one. And they talk about the shadow that lies over the land and the forces of the light that have to defeat it. We read in The Lord of the Rings, the story of the inscription on the ring. One ring to rule them all. One ring to find them. One ring to bring them all. And in the darkness, bind them. Darkness binds. Even in Harry Potter, Voldemort, what's he called? The Dark Lord. The Dark Lord. So this darkness, this power, this force that oppresses. In our passage out of Isaiah, it talks about those who are in anguish. Why are they in anguish? Because in the time of Isaiah, there were competing forces and powers that were fighting against one another, that plunged them into darkness. Assyria was constantly oppressing, and there were rival factions that were fighting against one another, that put the people into misery. No wonder they said it was a time of darkness. Unless we think, well, that was thousands of years ago and in Isaiah's time. Look what's happening in Ukraine today. Russia is attacking the power centers, the electricity, the gas, and plunging people into darkness. So they literally walk and sit in darkness in Ukraine. And they are oppressed. So whether the oppression is upon us metaphorically or physically, darkness reigns. And yet so many of us in our own lives are oppressed by darkness, by dark forces that are around us. Some are oppressed by economic forces, forces of darkness, that press them down, that feel they have no escape and no power. Others are bound to forces that oppress them in ways that, look at what we have to do. Our advertising tells us that we need all these pills to make our lives better. I'm not saying medicine cannot make our lives better in some ways, but we're bound up in a world that we have to have all these things. And this oppression falls upon us. Yet into this darkness, light comes. Light bursts forth. In Harry Potter's story, you have the dark one, of course, but whenever they want light, all they have to do is wave their wand and say, Lumos, and light appears. My daughter can do that just as well. She has a little incantation, she says, and makes light happen. She says, Google, turn on the lights. And they do. I mean, it's just an incantation. It's magic. I don't know how it works. You know, Google knows how it works. They must be wizards over there. They make it happen. I can walk to the, see, I'm old-fashioned. I don't have an incantation. Some of you remember the clapper, right? And you know, that would make the lights come on. But we have these wonderful things. We flip a switch and the light comes on. If only we could just flip a switch and make the darkness of despair, the darkness of anguish, the pain and hurt of a loved one who is ill or the loss of someone, the pain and hurt of families that are rent apart, the pain and hurt of ongoing oppression, of racism and sexism, of oppression against our brothers and sisters in the LGBTQ community, the oppression, even today, that 10 people lose their life in East Los Angeles, the oppression of the continuing oppression, the rod of violence in our nation. When will that be broken? We need light. We need the light that comes from Jesus Christ, the light of the world. That passage out of Isaiah, we don't normally read. This is the only time we read it outside of Christmas. Because the latter part of that passage, which we did not read today, was that unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Prince of Peace. The one who sets us free and brings light to the world. And Isaiah says, the one who breaks this oppression, it'll be like in the days of Midian. Don't you love it how the Bible just throws little phrases, words out there, and you go, we read past them, right? I even read past them. I go, the days of Midian. Okay, what's that all about? We just go past. It's all about the story of Gideon. You remember Gideon out of the Bible, who set out a fleece, right? Set out a fleece to see if their dew would fall on the fleece, and if everything worked right, then he was supposed to go and fight the Midianites. Midianites, by the way, who were cousins of the Israelites, because they were descended from Abraham, and Moses had married into the Midianite families. But they're fighting one another. It's oppression. They were oppressing the Israelites. And so God said to Gideon, go and raise an army and fight against them. So Gideon put out a call, and 22,000 people came. And God said, too many. Too many. Send some away. So Gideon said, anybody who wants to leave can leave. Most of them left, down to 10,000. God said, too many. Got too many there, so we'll live down there. It's too long of a story to say how we did it, but it has to do with lapping water like a dog. But anyway, let's get that number down. Gideon finally got down to 300 and was going against an army of thousands of the Midianites. So how did they defeat them? He said, I want you to put lamps in jars, strap a sword to your thigh, and blow trumpets. And so they marched against the Midianites in the night, and when the time came, they blew the trumpets. They shattered the jars with the lanterns, which made flames throw up, so that the Midianites were thrown into confusion because of the light that was all around them, and they thought a mighty giant army was coming against them when it was only 300. Because you see, God has come to us in the person of Jesus Christ. But it doesn't take a lot of light to drive out the darkness. Just a little bit of light, one broken jar, will begin to transform the world and break the rod of the oppressor. In the 1700s, in the reign of Queen Anne, it was not safe to be out at night. The famous philosopher and economist Thomas Hobbes said he wouldn't go out at night because he was afraid his head would get cracked for 5 pence. Because robbers were out. You walked outside in the street and you could get run over by a passing cart. So they passed a law that said you had to hang, if your house faced the street, you had to hang lights outside your window from All Hallows, which is Halloween, we would say, All Saints' Day, from All Hallows to Candlemas, February 2nd. So you had to hang lights out your window to light the streets so that it would be safe. The light begins to dawn when each and every one of us receive the light of Christ into our life and then hang our own lights, because Jesus says, you are the light of the world. Don't hide your light under a bushel. Don't hide your light away. Rather, let your light shine before all men, that all may glorify your Father in heaven. And so when Jesus calls the disciples, he's not just calling them to go fish for people. He's calling them to go hang out their lights. And all of you, and everyone who is called by the name of Christ, who is the light of the world, must hang out our lights. must shine with the light of Christ, imperfect though we are, to let the world know that the rod of oppression must be broken, that darkness will not defeat it, because the Lord is my light and my salvation. Of whom shall I be afraid? Brothers and sisters, we've a story to tell to the nations that will turn their hearts to the right. A story of love and mercy, a story of peace and light. And the darkness shall turn to dawning, and the dawning to noonday bright. And Christ's great kingdom will come on earth, the kingdom of love and light. Let your light shine today and always.